Good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Renacott. I'm the town supervisor. Welcome to our town board meeting of August 16th, 2021. If everyone could please rise for the allegiance, which is being led by Gary Davis.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we go any further, during the last month, we had two prominent members of our community pass away, Mr. David Wing and Mr. Steve Lacrosse. I'm going to ask our town manager, Doug Finch, to give us some words about their contributions to the community, and then we'll observe a moment of silence.
Sure. So I'll start with David Wink. Mr. Wink was a longtime member of the Canandaigua community, serving in a variety of different capacities. Most recently, and actually at the time of his passing, he was the town of Canandaigua's representative to the Ontario County Planning Board, and was actually serving in that capacity at the time of his death. He was actually chairman of the Ontario County Planning Board, now resident in the Villas. And then, of course, many of us knew Steve Lacrosse very well. He was a member of the Cheshire Fire Department, a very active firefighter. I believe he had the rank of lieutenant with the Cheshire Fire Department, lived on Middle Cheshire Road. He also was a board member, board of directors of Canandaigua Emergency Squad that we all worked very closely with a few years ago now. And then in addition to that, he was also a board of director of the Canandaigua Country Club in addition. So he's very, very engaged in the community and also the St. Mary's.
Thank you. If we could please observe a moment of silence in memory. Thank you. Jean, could you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Councilman Gary Davis.
President.
Councilwoman Linda Brozak.
Present.
Councilman Terry Bennett.
President.
Supervisor Kathy Renacott.
Present.
Councilman Jared Simpson.
Present.
Sorry for that. Jean, could you please confirm that the meeting was properly advertised?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. These written communications are attached to the agenda, which is available online. If you have trouble finding it, please let us know. We can help you find that. Before we go any further, I'd like to announce the employee birthdays from August 16th to September 19th. August 19th, Kai Alessandro. August 21st, Gabe Arthur. August 21st, Brian Statejock. 8/22, Gary Davis. 8/27, Michelle Rawlinson. 8/30, Scott Kiesel. 9/12, Robert LaCourse. 9/12, Larry Tyler. 9/16, yours truly. 9/16, Amanda Van Laken. And 9/19, Jeff Winter. Happy birthday to everyone. At this time, we have our first privilege of the floor. Please be advised if you wish to be heard. Limited to 3 minutes. It's not a time limit that I came up with myself. I do have to enforce it as town supervisor. And I apologize if I cut you off. I'll try to give you some warning. With that in mind, would anyone like to? Yes. Yes, please, so that we can have the microphone. So thank you.
My name is Karen Parkhurst. I'm a town resident. I live on Laura Lane. I'm here as the chair of the recently created affordable housing team. I would like to reiterate part of a communication I sent previously to all of the town board. I would like to point out to all of you that the affordable housing project team was authorized by this town board. Since this is such an enormous subject and undertaking, it's critical that the group have help with basic information related to the subject area. While I can envision a county-wide initiative, we need to start locally. Hopefully, we can advance the subject to other municipalities in Ontario County. But like I just said, we need some research help. As you all know, I was on town master plan update. team, and affordable housing is a mandate of that plan. It disturbs me to think that our town board can authorize a project team without providing any basic funding for it. In my opinion, it invites failure. So I'd like to briefly update you on some of the things I've been working on. I've approached the Ontario County Economic Development Board with a summary of what we would like to accomplish. It appears that I will get a resolution supporting the town's effort. I have the support of the Finger Lakes Workforce Investment Board per their Executive Director, Lynn Freed. I have approached a couple of Ontario County supervisors and hope to address the Board of Supervisors in the near future. I'm in contact with Carrie Bush, who is the co-chair of the statewide ALICE project. The ALICE project stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. I'm also in contact with Ontario County Social Services Commissioner Eileen Taderio. Page. Brian Young, Deputy County Administrator, is totally behind our effort, and I believe the LDC is supportive of our effort. And finally, the OCIDA policy specifically supports affordable housing, and I'm working on getting a resolution from them, and I'll be addressing them in the near future. So I would like to encourage you, as our town board, to pass the resolution for the MRB proposal on tonight's agenda. Without this help, we'll simply be languishing in rhetoric and not actively building a forward-thinking program. As representatives of the town, I hope you will choose to help this team. And as always, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else like to be heard this time? Priority business, we have none at this time. Presentations. We have introduction to the proposed Uptown Landing, proposed form-based code development from Jeff Cook, the properties from Thornton Engineering, and John Lasher, Capstone Real Estate Development.
Good evening. 3 minutes, or do we have more than that?
You have more than-
No, thank you.
Speak quickly.
I'm Glenn Thornton with Thornton Engineering, the engineer for the applicant, who is Cook Properties of New York, and Capstone Construction with Don Lasher. As you can see on the screen, we're talking with 4 parcels. I think that's the aerial view. That's Fire Hall Road to the left, Parkside Drive to the south. Those are the 4 parcels that are currently under contract to Cook Properties. Those contracts will expire, and that's why we're not trying to fast track this, but we are trying to get the project. We need a warm fuzzy about the project. Is what we need. So what we have is there's 4 parcels. There's various zoning in the 4 parcels. They total approximately 100 acres in size. It's in the Uptown study area. It's currently zoned various residential zoning. It's in the mixed use overlay district. So we have applied for a rezone of these 4 parcels totaling 100 acres. So that we can develop the property as shown. And this is a concept plan. It will definitely change, be improved as we move forward, but we're looking at a dedicated town road beginning on Parkside Drive at the Brown Road intersection, running to the north and then swinging to the west, where we would align with the Airline Drive roadway. That would be a 2-lane roadway with a sidewalk, with lighting, and that would be built to town standards. The remainder of the roadways throughout the project would be private roadways. This entire project will be owned by the applicant. It will not be sold individual parcels. So we hope to combine the 4 properties into 1 parcel under private ownership. Those would be private roads, but we would dedicate what we're calling Uptown Boulevard that runs through the project. At the south end, you can see along Parkside Drive, we're proposing some multi-story
mixed use, maybe retail first floor, parking behind the building.
For a quick second. So
Yeah.
You had mentioned rezoning. I just want to make sure everybody understands. If we move forward with the form-based code, you wouldn't need the rezoning request that you've already.
I didn't feel it was right for me to say that, so thank you. Thank you for jumping in.
I just wanna
Yes,
make sure
yes.
everybody understands that.
Yes, and the way we've developed this right now, it was for a rezone, which would require 40% green space within the property. There are a few things that we didn't fit with the rezone because I understand the mixed use overlay, only one use is allowed in a parcel, and we're looking at multiple uses, so we would need to twist things a little bit to make it happen. But with the form-based code, I think we fit very well with that. But yeah, on the south end of the project, we'd have mixed use along Parkside, and then we'd have two-story apartments, single-story townhomes, and then can you jump back a couple to the concept plan? Yeah, on this one, in the northern part on the private road system, those would be single-family affordable housing. That's what we're proposing up there. They'd be manufactured homes set on foundations, regular crawl space type foundations. That's called a ground set. And we do have some renderings of those buildings, the single-family residential, as well as the multi-story buildings and the apartments and townhomes in the packet. Hopefully everybody received a packet, and I'm kind of probably just babbling up here on things that you've already seen, but I figured I came to the meeting, I should say something. But we are very excited about the project. We have the resources to pull this together. We would like to start as soon as possible. Number one would be finalizing the land deals, and we will do that once this moves forward a little bit farther in the process so that we are comfortable that this can happen. This is something the town would want to see. But I think based upon the Uptown study, I think it has the elements that you were looking for in the study with the affordable housing, maybe a little bit more dense than what we've shown on this plan. I think with the form-based code, we could create something a little bit more dense, create more single-family homes. We've got the multi-story fronting at the Aeroline Drive, Fire Hall Road intersection with the parking behind the buildings. We're proposing some pocket parks up there just to really open up sight lines into the development and create, some places where people, if there was a coffee shop or something, where you could actually sit outside. So that's the game plan. This property is right adjacent to Blue Heron Park, and we're trying to keep a buffer between our development and the park, which I think we've done. There'd also be walking trails throughout the development, as well as sidewalks along all the private roads. So it'd be a lot of opportunities to walk for sure.
Is everything for rent, even the single family homes then?
The apartments, the townhomes would be for rent. The single family would all be
For sale.
for sale.
What's the price point for the single family?
Mid to high hundreds.
And then you said that the developer put properties maintains ownership of the property,
We would.
but the piece, so they would purchase the home and then they would have like a lot rent?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we would maintain all the common areas, all the roadways, the common area landscaping. We would have like community center, we would maintain that. Some activity courts, we would maintain those. In addition to the roadways, the sidewalks, and the walking trails.
And then the lot rent, do you have an idea? Do you have an idea?
Not yet, but I mean, it's probably gonna be, around 500
Okay.
ballpark.
How many single family units are there?
I think we've shown around 175 currently. we will probably increase the density if we move forward into the form-based code. I think we can do that without compromising the design. We have a lot of green space out there, and I think with a few connecting roads between the roads we've shown, we can still maintain green space. We would definitely maintain the green space, the trails around the perimeter with a buffer to the adjoining properties. But yeah, I think we would probably create more units. We might be able to provide around 250, 225 to 250.
And those would be, the lots would be rented,
Correct.
so all the roads would be owned by, and the amenities would be owned by you guys.
Correct.
Correct.
And used by, so everybody living here would be a tenant in one way or another.
With the exception of Uptown Boulevard, right? That would be a dedicated road, I believe.
Yep.
Correct.
I just wanted to say, since I'm sitting here, I am a tenant of Jeff Cook. I don't know if you remember Jeff. Is Jeff here?
Come on, yep.
Hi, Jeff.
Yeah,
Captain
you probably, yeah, we probably dealt with you through Andy.
Correct.
Yep.
And in full disclosure, I'm thinking, you probably didn't even know I was town supervisor when I rented office.
No, I did, yeah.
Oh, you did?
I did, yeah.
But I'm feeling, that's maybe why you charge me so much. That's very reasonable, but I'm not feeling comfortable here being involved in this, so I'm going to sit out, even though there's probably, as a mere renter of a tiny office, I have little to no dealings with you personally, but I'm not comfortable being involved in this or the form-based code. I just started renting office space from Cook Properties a few months ago, full disclosure. So I will sit this out, and Jared, if you want to take over, as far as these things go, I will sit out and
You're
just.
not gonna leave, are you?
Not gonna leave,
You're
at this
gonna come
point, I will leave though, when we're building on form-based code.
Yeah, I think that'd be a property on Parkside Drive.
Correct.
So it's okay.
297 Parkside
Yeah.
Drive.
How many?
You're in building 300, right?
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's, how many, what do you have, three buildings?
We have 6 buildings.
Six.
We have 3 single tenant buildings and then three multi-tenant buildings. Overall, I think we're probably around, we have a lot of small offices, like you have. We probably got about 50 tenants in total, between the 6 properties. So we love the area. We're super excited that we were able to put the land under contract straight across the street from us. So we're very pleased about it.
My office is my law, so there's nothing to do.
Right, yep. So,
Yeah, I should jump here. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with Don Lasher and Capstone Construction. Don is developing the former GW Lisk site on Gorham Street. And if you haven't been down there, I encourage you to drive through. It's pretty
It's amazing.
spectacular. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Anything else on this? Oh, sorry.
Oh,
You're gonna take
sorry.
over.
But I said you're not leaving.
You're not getting in your car and driving away.
Maybe I should just take over.
So any other discussion? Or any other questions?
Here, we didn't really have any action on this agenda for tonight. It was more just presentation, and then we move forward with the form-based code portion.
Okay. All right, so.
But I would say if you have any comments, we would love to hear them now as we move forward.
Have you thought? I guess it's kind of difficult. So when I initially heard, I didn't know that it was gonna be a rental, like a lot rental. And I was wondering if you thought about putting any basements on the properties, or if that would just increase astronomically the price.
it would increase the cost. There is gonna be, our plans was to have a crawl space, there'll be crawl spaces. I mean, a lot of it can be dictated by the residents. So. It's not out of the question, though.
You know, a good mason? You can't find masons
No, you
anymore.
can't.
It-
Well, maybe if you book one now for us. It's about what's going on right now.
Have you done similar projects in other places that of this scope?
Don has, I haven't done anything of this scope. We've done a lot of adjacent development to our current holdings. But yet, part of the reason why I asked Glenn, because I had put the land under contract, and I asked Glenn, I go, Glenn, who would be a good partner for us? And Glenn had nothing but good things to say about Don, and we checked Don out, and Don checked us out, and we checked out the Gorin project again, which is incredible. So we are starting a partnership here. So, yep. We both bring some unique sets of experiences to the table, and I think it'll be a good complement to each other.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
All right. All right, so now we'll move on to continued public hearings. This is a continued public hearing on the text code amendment for the Uptown Florida-based code on State Route 332. And this is resolution 2021-172. The intent is to open the public hearing, to continue the public hearing, and most likely it will be continued to the September meeting. I'd like to go ahead and can I get a motion to open the public hearing? All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any questions or comments on form-based code? So I'm going to give an overview for those because we didn't have many people here last time.
Sure. So we opened the public hearing obviously last month. This form-based code is something that we started about 5 years ago now, really with the initial Uptown feasibility study and taking a look at what that area and having a plan for Uptown. We jokingly kind of said, but it's true, kind of at the early initial stages, the absence of a plan equals car dealerships. Not that we don't love our car dealership business owners in the community, but that's kind of what happens. And this has been a collective effort by a large group of residents and volunteers that have been involved with us with the Uptown feasibility study as we've developed that. And one of the primary action items for the Uptown study in order to construct what the residents and the volunteers had suggested that we construct in Uptown was the need to change our zoning in that area. Right now, it's a hodgepodge of zoning. A lot of it, as was referenced in the previous presentation, is even restricted business. There's some residential. There's a hodgepodge of different things. Where form-based code is really designed to build to a aesthetic look and specific design and create greater density in this particular area of Uptown in exchange for relief essentially in other parts of the town. And again, trying to encourage development in this particular piece, whereas in other areas we try to promote the conservation of open space, agricultural lands, and those types of efforts. So the form-based code, this is really kind of step one. We've held a public hearing. There's two more pieces to this form-based code. There's also a couple of resolutions on tonight's board agenda. The form-based code document itself is a planning document. We had hired Bergman Associates to actually create the planning document. So this public hearing is in reference to the adoption of the planning document. We also have a resolution on your town board agenda tonight to set a public hearing on a text code amendment to actually put the form-based code into town code. And an additional public hearing, or I'm sorry, an additional resolution to set a public hearing on the actual rezoning of all of the parcels in Uptown to form-based code or the mixed-use sub area associated with that. So there's three actual resolutions on tonight's town board agenda relative to form-based code. The one thing is, and Jared, you just mentioned this, that we may continue this. The county planning department had provided us some comments back, and the folks over at Bergman Associates were kind of working through that for us and just making sure that all the i's are dotted and all the t's are crossed. And so I believe that that's really the only reason to maybe continue it unless somebody has some concerns, especially with a developer possibly that's interested in the area specific to the form-based. If anybody wanted to share any concerns that they had with it, tonight might be a good opportunity for that. But generally speaking, I know that they just want to work through those final tweaks.
Yeah, because they have 40 suggestions. So
Some of them I think were pertinent and some of them not so much, just because they hadn't been involved with us through the process for so long. But there were some interesting questions that we just want to make sure that we've got everything addressed.
So any comments or anybody would like to speak from the public about form-based code? Any questions? Okay, any board members have any questions?
Not this one.
Okay. So with nothing,
Motion to close the public meeting.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so close it or continue it? We'll continue it. So we redo it, motion to continue public hearing to September town board meeting. Sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Just to be clear, the other two resolutions.
Because it's just setting a public hearing, so we're not
All
taking
three
any.
public hearings.
All right. Is that all cap, that's all cap needs about for, correct? Until we come back to the other. Yeah. Also, while we're waiting, so we don't take up anybody more time than we need to. The next public hearing on the agenda is regarding digital signs. So, motion to open a public hearing pertaining to resolution 2021-175, zoning and digital signage. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the public hearing is open. Anybody like to make any comments regarding digital signage?
I have to get up there?
Yeah. So they'll hear you on TV.
Yeah, this is from, I did a lot of reading and from Traffic Safety Consultants. This article was based on studies published by 9 academic, industry, and government studies in 5 countries. Basically, the study showed a heightened safety risk. Research provides persuasive evidence that digital billboards take drivers' eyes off the road for dangerously long gazes, especially for the changes of messaging. And a quote from this article was, "The more that commercial digital signs succeed in attracting the attention of motorists that render them a worthwhile investment for owners and advertisers, the more they represent a threat to safety along our streets and highways." Government-funded studies on impact of 18 digital billboards found crash rates 25 to 29% higher near the digital signs than at control signs down the road, many involving rear-end collisions or side swipes that are typical of driver distraction. A point was made by a Massachusetts study that it is likely that drivers find it nearly impossible to avoid a glance to digital billboards during switches between advertisements. Perhaps the fact that humans are neurophysiologically predisposed to orient to motion or sudden change in periphery is a marketing advantage to digital billboards. While that might be good news for advertisers, it also suggests that motorists were focused on something other than driving safely. When considering whether or not to allow digital signs, communities should imagine what it would look like if every allowed property had one, because this would set a precedent. My question, do digital signs support or detract from town character? It's also important to note that many of the studies claiming to disprove a direct connection between digital signs and traffic safety are either directly or indirectly sponsored by the sign industry. Distracted drivers are unsafe drivers. Add to that bad weather and heavy traffic, or an unanticipated event or action occurs when a driver has to respond quickly and correctly. I guess my question is, which is more important, advertising or safety? Thank you.
Thank you. Could you state your name for the official record? I know who you are.
Huh?
Could you state your name? for the
Yeah,
record?
Yvonne Chavez.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're in charge.
Sure.
You have the
Would anyone else like to be heard on this matter at this time? Seeing no hands. Oh, I'm sorry.
There's representatives of Lamar here if you'd like, if the board would like to hear from them.
If you'd like to be heard, please step up to the podium. We'd love to hear from you.
My name is Jim Newton. I'm with Lamar Advertising. We appreciate your opinion. We agree that distracted drivers are, unsafe, but the question is, what is distracting? Is it a cell phone? Is it the kids? Is it eating? So there's a lot more things that go into distracting than billboards. And when people cite studies based off of multiple countries, you'd have to look at what the regulations are in those countries, which I don't know. I know in our country, in the state of New York, that we have criteria from New York State Department of Transportation that we have to meet, and proposal meets all those criteria. But in other countries, they have digital billboards in mediums, across the roads, space closer, and we don't have any of that. So I don't know if we're comparing apples and apples for studies. And what Mike is doing is looking at, he's looking up some studies that we have submitted with our application in regard to safety. And, our conclusion is that you're more likely to have an accident with a deer than have a digital billboard cause an accident. We've had boards in city of Rochester and for going on 12 years. And the last time we went to apply for a conversion of a digital sign, the city checked DOT to see any accidents that happened at our sign, which is 14 by 48, which is much larger than we're proposing, and there was 0. And so, I don't have the factual information, but that's what the city of Rochester told us. So I'm gonna let Mike take it over from here.
Yeah, I don't have the actual studies in front of me. Again, they've been provided to you guys. I'd be happy to provide them again. There's 4 or 5 different studies. I'm not sure which one this lady was citing. I know she said that the study size was 18 signs. I'm not sure where those are. That's a bit of a small sample size. The Federal Highway Association released their latest findings. I believe it was in 2015. They released 200 plus page report all about digital billboards and distracted driving, and concluded that the gaze that she referenced was, I think it was like 0.04 seconds is what a digital billboard caused compared to a static billboard. It was like 1/100th of a second longer for digital, and they saw essentially no difference. So again, I don't have the exact studies in front of me, but I know that the Federal Highway Association, the FHA, they have the latest study pertaining to digital signs, especially relating to New York highways. So that's what I'll say.
Liability has not ever been sued for safety reasons, for instance, but you're aware.
No, Joe. So also, I mean, just with signs in New York State, you have to get a New York State DOT permit for these signs. And the number one stipulation is they do a whole traffic study. They review the permit, they drive it, they look at it from every angle and say, all right, like this sign is okay for static, this location will be okay for digital. And if accidents were to increase, they reserve the right to pull the permit and we would take the sign down. So
And that, of course, would happen in this
if it was, for, yes.
in terms of studying the location and.
Yep. That's the requirement for, it would be for this situation as well.
Anything else? Do we need to? Have a motion to close this hearing? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Public hearing is now concluded. As pertains to 2021-175. Digital sign. Next, we have public hearing on proposed 2021 town plan global comprehensive plan. And a motion to open this hearing. Any discussion on opening hearings? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is now open as to the town of Canada global comprehensive plan. What is it like to be heard on the comprehensive plan? More on the town board.
There were some, and maybe I didn't understand the scope as much. There are some things in there, like page 9. It talks about looking into, it mentions things like autonomous vehicles. Even just today I read, there's something that popped up about why Tesla vehicles keep driving into emergency vehicles. So are those, I know it as a guiding document, I just worry about things like that in there. Those page 9 bottom paragraph mentions electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles.
Can you read the whole paragraph?
Yes, transportation is the goal sorry, don't laugh at me. It is the goal of the town to facilitate a diversified transportation system that effectively serves motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians, transit users, and farm equipment operators. Future transportation development should accommodate active alternative transportation and be designed to maximize safety for all modes of travel. Transportation infrastructure should incorporate changing technologies such as electric vehicles and autonomous vehicles.
Yeah. So again, it should obviously, you can get into any kind of definition relative to that. And the town board has the final say on it. I mean, it's certainly, the wave of the future it's being looked at. I just saw a study today that said Mercedes-Benz is guaranteeing that their vehicle is safer and has an anti-brake. I mean, it's any number of different things. I mean, we're going to get into right with all that. So I think you're referring to specifically, that's the goals section on page 9. I just had to pull it up here for a quick second. So those are the goal sections, and then the action steps are specifically in the back in terms of the action steps that we would charge theoretically the Citizens Implementation Committee with. I can't get to it right now. Well, it's not pulling up fast enough, but those specific action steps, I don't know of a specific action
I don't
step
remember
that
seeing one.
says
No, there's
something
one that talks
specific.
about
But
that.
it might be something for the other version, for the electric vehicles, it might be, encourage the installation of charging stations.
Right.
I don't know what transportation infrastructure is required for.
And I had the same question about the affordable renewable energy options on page 10. I mean, I've done 2 of those in my home. They're renewable, but they're not affordable. So, I mean, so it's, things like that, just to be aware of the plan, just to be thinking about.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the action steps. There isn't a specific action step that I see relative to autonomous vehicles. It's more broad than that. Explore options for road safety, including roadway design, construction of roads, sidewalks, public and pedestrian transportation, development patterns, those types of things. I don't see anything specific to autonomous vehicles. So the section that you're referring to is more of, I believe, so it's the goals. You're absolutely right. There's 10 goals, I believe, associated with this new comprehensive plan. And then there's a lot of narrative associated with the different goals in the different sections. And then the action steps would be the recommendation action steps would be the steps that we would be charging to move forward with. And then keep in mind too, the town board always has the final say on that. So generally what we've done in the past is the Citizens Implementation Committee, for instance, would have a strategic planning session, bring those top priorities to the town board to see if the town board agrees with those action items that they're working on for the next year. So that the town board can provide support and direction relative to those action items.
I did have some comments as well, but I'm trying to pull it up, so I can't get on it.
It's slow.
Yeah, so I can direct you to where it is. I have concerns about the statistics section, and I had spoken at the meeting about this, and spoken to Eric Cooper about it. I'm a little bit of a stickler for interpreting statistics, and I think we have to be very careful with. There's a section on income, real income, our aging population, not that any of it is incorrect, but I think you're using statistics from estimated 2017 census data, and you will have updated data very soon. I was researching this today, when that data will become available. Things have changed tremendously in the last couple of years in terms of housing affordability, as we all know. There's a trend in there that says, for example, that, and I think the word used is extraordinary or phenomenal with regard to rentals by our population over 65, I think it's over 65 to 75 and how much it's gone up. I think you need to look into that more to see what type of housing, not that it won't be done, I'm sure it will be done, but and I expressed this concern. We have a lot of senior living facilities that are those considered rentals, considered senior living facilities. But that's one of the reasons I moved here is for affordable senior living for my mother. So I'm very much in favor of this. I just think that we have to be careful with these statistics. I think we had one person interpreting data. I might have interpreted it differently. And I don't know that some of that should have been in there. And I did bring that up. So it's still in there, but I just want it footnoted for whatever it's worth, since I won't be here after the end of the year, but perhaps updates to that should be considered every year.
Yeah, so I think I was just doing a quick search while you were speaking. Page 47 and 48 refer to income and housing affordability. I know that they did put some footnotes in there, and there's also a reference to using, it says specifically using 2017 census estimate, so that's called out. I know I did have a conversation with Sarah and Shauna about maybe doing a new appendix once we get the census data information that could be added to it, so that more update information is being provided.
And I did read those footnotes. One of them goes to a dead, there's no reference, so I looked it up myself. And I couldn't figure out from going to that particular website what that meant. And I think that's important for someone who's reading this as a developer or someone just interested in, I think you have to be very careful about those statistics. So that's mine. And I appreciate all the work that went into it. And I understand that it's sort of a guideline for us. But when we're talking about businesses coming here, we have to be very careful with those statistics. Anyone else? Okay. We have a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to close the public hearing passes, and the public hearing as to the 2021 Town of Canandaigua Comprehensive Plan is now before. Okay. New public hearing on text code limiting only portions of town code chapter 74. This is conservation subdivision. We are going to put this over, but I will open the hearing in case anyone is here to speak on this. I have a motion to open this hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here today who would like to be heard on this? Of course.
So this project, looking at our conservation subdivision, this regulations is something that we've been talking about for a while now. And we actually, at the beginning of 2020, we had actually formed a project team to look at conservation subdivision, and then COVID happened, so it kind of got delayed. We did hire Labella Associates, and Bart Johnson is with us tonight to actually help us. The goal here is that conservation subdivision, the way it was written and currently exists in Town of Canandaigua County Code, it gives an incredible amount of leeway to a developer to claim whatever it is they want to claim that they are conserving. And really, these proposed regulations put a lot more teeth into our regulations and say things that should be conserved and help spell out the natural resources. And if you don't mind, if I could just call on Bart just a quick second to kind of give an overview. Bart, you should be unmuted there.
Yes. Good evening, Town Board and the public. Doug summarized this intent pretty clearly. The aim of the revisions was to clarify the process. We tried to make it simpler. It still may not be simple, but we hope it's clear, and to also tie the new regulations into the natural resource inventory. And really the aim is for the town and developers to use this tool to preserve in a significant way the resources that are identified in the natural resource inventory on a parcel of land while accommodating some residential development or This tool is allowed by New York State town law. It's called cluster development in the town law. It's a cluster subdivision. So it's authorized by town law, and the town's been doing this for a while. But the revisions really zero in on defining what are the most important resources. There's a hierarchy that's laid out, and it requires any developer who wants to use it to first look at what the resources are, do a conservation analysis and a conservation plan, and design the residential subdivision around that. So I think it holds together well as a revision, and I did just this week see county planning's comments, and some of those were good comments, and I think we would like to make some revisions and maybe have a discussion with them. And there's one or two areas that might need some discussion by the team that was working on the regulations. But I'd be interested in any thoughts any of you all or the public might have.
I don't think we have anyone else here that wants to be heard. Oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to. Do I really have to get up?
You really did.
Pain.
We'll have to get a mobile microphone. Maybe we'll check.
Okay, you all know who I am. And I was on that conservation easement team. And if I understand it, any developer worth being a developer will understand it. Because I had a hard time understanding it when we started, but it is very clear. There are diagrams in the document that you just can't put aside without knowing what you're supposed to be doing here, right? So, and the language is clear, the step-by-step instructions are clear, the natural resource inventory, that's very clear. It's a very clear document, and in my opinion, that's the way all documents in government ought to be written, which they aren't. Thanks.
And are the comments from the county significant enough to delay the implementation of this?
Well, I think that the regulations would benefit from a few edits. There were like 17 comments, so I won't say they're all minute. Some I think they're worth considering and going in and making a few edits. There were some good comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so do we need to vote to put this over, or we just put it over?
I do have a comment.
Oh,
I have a question more than a comment.
I don't know if I have an answer, but.
I've come to realize.
As you know, there's no questions allowed during the public hearings. That being said, I'm assuming.
I have a comment about that too. I don't know if you want to hear that now, but I will be happy to talk about that too. I guess my question is, what do we think this really does? I have my interpretation, and I think I was a developer worth my salt, but I guess I'd like to know what people think this actually does. I know what I think it does.
Do you want to tell us what you think it does?
What I think it does?
Sure.
I think this requires the developer to set aside those lands which basically are undevelopable because of the natural resource considerations of the particular lot that he's developing. And then based on that, once you subtract that amount of acreage away from the lot, then the remaining acreage is calculated based on a formula that's illustrated in this document. And from that calculation, the number of developable lots is determined. And then once that's determined, that developer could put the number of lots or building structures on those lots that is determined by the particular zoning of the area that you're developing in. That's what this basically says. And Doug, I see you shaking your head yes, so you concur
Yes.
that that's what it
That's
is.
accurate.
That's
I don't know if Barb has anything more, she outlaid the team, but I think you actually summarized it very well, Doug.
Yes, I agree. And you know, what the innovation with this is, the lots don't have to be on large lots that take up all of those secondary resources, not the ones that are prevented from being built on, but those other resources in the natural resource inventory, like the woods, the stream corridors. So they can put the lots on smaller lots than the zoning would otherwise require in exchange for setting aside some open space that meets the town's priorities as laid out in the natural resource inventory and in the regulations.
So as a follow-up comment, what you're basically doing is building in clusters.
Mhm.
So to speak. So you're focusing all your homes and all your structures in a certain area of developable lots. And based on a formula. That's all. I'm just clarifying so that everybody in my clearly understands what this document suggests and is doing. And I think there's some follow-up conversation based on some other things that the town is looking at that go hand in hand with this, but I just want to make sure that the board clearly understands what you're looking at approving. So that's all. Just comment, question, that's all.
This really does pertain to cluster subdivision. I think Barbara referenced that conservation subdivision. Yes, what has happened in actuality is you have developers over the past 15 years. I'm going to pick on Lakewood Meadows here for a minute, and I know there's a couple of you that live in Lakewood Meadows, but Lakewood Meadows is a good example where that was a cluster subdivision, conservation subdivision. And the conserved lands, actually, I believe may even be in one person's backyard. And whether or not there's a significant natural resource effort or that is worth preserving, that was something that was determined between the developer and the planning board at the time. Whereas this would put a lot more regulations in actually spelling out what are the natural resources that we should be protecting.
And I would add too, that this is a first step. There have to be other steps taken and they're being looked at, but in order to protect other things like ridge lines and the view shed, that's the next step on top of this. So this is the first, and then those two piggyback on this to help prevent issues that have happened in the past.
So, my question, anybody else wants to hear? Yeah. Do we take a motion to?
It's really up to the town board. If you want to, I think some of you may wish to take action on this to help protect, and some of you may want to wait for the amendments. I think the town board needs to have some discussion and figure out what you want to do.
If we wait, what's the next step? This has to go back through the ordinance committee. And take
Another
X
public
number of
hearing.
months. And we're already discussing some other
Right.
stuff.
Yeah.
Well, my question also is if we pass this, are the changes so different that we can then amend with those changes?
If you pass some other local, we can set a public hearing at your September meeting for a public hearing in October
Supersede it.
yeah, essentially supersede it.
I mean, the biggest one that I see in here that they pointed out is the fallow farmland. That if it's fallow as part of the crop of rotating cycle, those 2 years don't count in it, and that's point number 4. So I definitely would, and that's something that we can make a note of, if we pass it now and then make a note to amend it and add that later, so at least we have it on the books. And then we can add that part there. That's the biggest thing that I see.
And there is language in there though that says that the planning board can, in essence, well, we understand the relation.
Right.
We're not going to consider that.
Right.
There's language to do that already, so. I mean, it gives the planning board some.
I personally would like to see the changes before I vote, but if you guys want to vote, we can.
We discussed at finance the risk of taking a few more months. Just leaves this open to all of the things that we haven't wanted to capture in so far. And so we were talking about what would be the benefit, or would there be a benefit to just passing it as it is and then making the next quick amendment to include any of the comments that aren't already addressed.
I guess my question is, what would be the downside to doing that? Are the amendments such that we're leaving ourselves open? I don't pretend to be an expert in this area, so I'm relying on
A copy of the
others to tell me.
county.
I also don't want it to be confusing
Thank
to developers to have one thing and then change it. Are those changes so significant that it would make such a big difference in that plan?
Well, the thing about it is, Kathy, is that in the ordinance committee, we've gone through this for, several months now. And there's always something that comes up, and if we keep doing this, keep kicking the can down the road, we're not accomplishing anything for the town or for the plan. And I've always said, once we pass something, we hope we got it as close as what we possibly can to, be correct. And if we have to, we can always pull it back and add to it.
I get that, that's what I just said, but my question is, will we make it, I need, before I feel comfortable voting on this, I need to know, is it confusing in its current state to developers, builders, and will those changes 2 months down the line, or however long it takes, further make things confusing? So part of the discussion in finance, I went through a bunch of them and said, this is already covered, this is covered, this is covered. So there, even though there were like 14, there were only a few that were needy enough to kind of send back the ordinance and say, what do you think about that? And that was why we started to discuss, would it make sense to get it on the books, because linking it to the natural resource inventory is something that doesn't happen today. There's so many good things are being prevented by maybe getting it perfect, and so that's why I was leaning towards, we need this, and so, I just, being a lawyer, I don't like to rush things for the sake of rushing things. I think it's important, but I think it's important to do it the right way. If you are all telling me, and if our experts are telling us that this is okay as is, and I trust that when Barbara did it, she did it beautifully, and I think it's great. I just want to hear from others that, and again, I'll only be here for the end of the year. This is a living, breathing document that everyone in this town will have to live with. I live in Lakewood Meadows. I'm well aware of issues that came up and what the purpose of it is. So it's not that I don't want to take action, I have no problem taking action, I don't kick the can down the road. I just want to make sure if I'm kicking it now, that it's okay now.
So since I couldn't make finance, and I don't think anybody out here in the audience was at finance, what were some of those meaty things that were proposed? The changes. the
I don't think any of
significant
them were especially needed.
No,
they were
we
just not
went
addressed.
through all 20 of the 21, I think, what was it? 17 of the items. Chris just read them again.
And I'll be honest, I know something about conservation subdivisions. I think Barb did a great job with what's there. I've drafted conservation subdivision regulations for other municipalities. I've seen good ones, I've seen bad ones. This is a good one. You're in great shape with it. I think these comments from the county are great comments for the ordinance committee to bat around and discuss and maybe come back with some modifications, but modifications to an already revised law. You've got no downside to adopting the law in its current format. These are all enhancements that the county's experts took the time to suggest to you. And you should consider them. But they're all enhancements. Well, it takes certain situations and makes it better, but what you've got now in front of you would really provide a nice framework, at least for the conservation subdivision. It's much better than what the town has right now.
If I can just jump in for a quick second, so some of the comments, for instance, like number 17, consider requiring development of forest management plan for any conserved woodlots. So, that's something that I think our open space team would probably need to discuss, maybe even the ECB, kick that around a little bit. Some of these things relative to agriculture, I think the agriculture committee would want to talk about and reference. As Chris was saying, the law itself, it's better than what we have. And whether or not we end up going through and doing all 17 of these, or maybe only do 4 or 5 of them, they warrant conversation, and kudos to the county for taking the time to go through and provide it to us. That's great. Wish they'd done that a little sooner, but anyway. But, you know, it's definitely something that warrants conversations, but I think they're much more in-depth conversations. I don't think it's, we'll have that back to you next month.
And that's what I want to know. I do think things like that need to be done. I'm aware of a particular person, friend of mine, whose lot was cleared before she moved on, even though it was supposed to be protected woodlands. And how do you enforce that? We have no recourse. And when I looked at that person's survey, you couldn't even tell really what trees, what was included in that. So there's no way to go to, so those are things I agree need to be done, but I do agree that this is better than what we had. And Barbara, if you're comfortable with it, I'm sure you are, since you were key in developing it, and I've been watching all along. You say this is good, but can be better, but good for now. I will.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Excuse me. The county didn't, critique the structure of it and the priority system and how to make decisions. I agree that that they are improvements. They weren't off the wall comments. I think most of them, there was just 1 or 2. I said, I don't think that's necessary or appropriate, but they had to do with, some of the buffers and, I think it could be tweaked to be better, but from the county's perspective, there wasn't anything with the structure and the process and the priorities and how it functions. So I agree that it's sound and ready to go. And I also agree that considering the comments as an amendment would be fine. And I don't think it would end up being more restrictive. It would actually be a little less restrictive, because one of their comments was having a buffer on the stream buffer. And also there's a lot of flexibility in the planning board and applying these.
Okay.
So that doesn't bind them to a situation, and I think it would be, yeah, I'm comfortable with it. Long answer short.
Okay, thank you.
But then when you have some revisions, the same Word document, say, chapter 174 is replaced in its entirety with the following, and just drop it in. Not the whole 174, 174.
So can I have a motion to close this public? Anyone else want to be heard first? Can I have a motion to close this public hearing? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. The public hearing to amend portions of Town Code Chapter 174, Section 16 is now closed. Reports of town officials and department heads. Jim, Highway and Water.
Report. Which was nothing new.
Assessor, Pam? I have nothing to add. Okay. I don't see Lee here. Town historian. Jean, town clerk. I have nothing further. Shauna, planner. I have nothing to add. Okay, Doug?
I have submitted my report. The only thing I just add is, and just kind of looking for some general direction. We have had a request from some town residents who live on North Road. Their backyards are actually in the city of Canandaigua. I did have a brief conversation with the city manager this past week about possibility. There's a piece of Atwater Meadows, which is city park. It's actually in the town of Canandaigua. Maybe doing a land swap or annexation type thing, and so that we can bring those town residents fully into the town of Canandaigua. So if just get generally like a thumbs up, you want me to proceed looking at that, I'll work on that, but I'm not looking for you guys to make a decision tonight.
They've been asking for 5 years. I think that was one of the first things somebody called me on when I came onto the board 5 years ago. And so definitely, if we could do it, that would be wonderful.
Okay. Great, that's all.
And supervisor, deputy supervisor, the monthly financial reports are included, including revenue and expense reports, overtime reports for all departments, highway and water. I just want to, I'm not sure when I was going to pop in with this, but I might as well do it now. For those of you that don't know, I am the town's representative on the Canandaigua Lake Watershed Council, not to be confused with the Watershed Association. Although the Watershed Association, Redlands, and the Watershed Council are all supporting an initiative for the Ring of Fire this year to use LED lights. We were given a sample, which I would probably leave for Jean to leave up front, or Doug suggested one of the parks. These are not voter safety approved flares, but they are flares which can be used again, and they would be used instead of the chemical flares which can cause pollution when not cleaned up, which a lot of people do not, they leave behind, and of course those leave byproducts behind which can pollute our lake. So these were donated to us. They're very cool on top of it, and obviously can be used for other purposes, but not necessarily approved for such. So there's a flyer about it here, and this is the kit. If anybody wants to look at it, I'll leave it out for later. And that was for the horse. So those are available at Wegmans. I don't get any money back from that. All right, Finance Committee. Nothing further. Planning, Terry.
Yeah, we had a public works committee meeting last Friday. Looking for places to spend money, this ARPA money that we have, $1.15 million. After which we have already, that have to get next year. We talked about it in the finance committee meeting on Thursday also. The finance committee meeting this week, we agreed that we bring back some ideas for where this money could be applied. And one of the areas is for creating sewer districts in Cheshire or Grandview Park area. We're already working on a plan for County Road 28. The county had asked that Greg, both the town engineer, look at what possible build out would be in that area, so that they could have some feeling for capacity in the future. So we agreed to the numbers that he presented to us, take that data, go to them and talk to them. So that's going on. He's going to revise the numbers for Cheshire and Grandview Park so that we could see if applying some of that money might make a difference in the affordability of sewage systems in those areas. So the other areas are transfer station. In the future, there are probably going to be some changes will be necessitated by what's happening at the county level with the landfill. Years ago, when we designed the highway building facility, we also looked at the whole campus and looked at what the future might demand. This building, highway building, transfer station. We had a preliminary design for a transfer station. The newer upgraded one be located to the east of this building in the field that we own next door. And while that plan is something we could undertake, it's still not all that clear what direction the county may give us in the future. So for now, we're kind of holding off on making any recommendation. There has been a lot of talk about pay as you throw. That is probably something that will come in the future to all of us. We had a brief meeting with Carla Jordan, the Director of Sustainability for the county, a few weeks ago, Jim and Caitlin, Doug and I, and she indicated that the county is going to be also working on doing something with the haulers, people to collect, at your curb, Casella and people like that, waste management, and the other people that if there is to be a pay-as-you-throw program, it's going to have to affect everybody, not just people who use transfer stations. Transfer stations in our county contribute about 7,000 tons of materials to the landfill annually. The whole county, including those haulers, the number is 107,000 tons. So transfer stations are a rather minor portion of it, but to put the entire burden of pay as you throw on the transfer station and ignore that other area is kind of unfair. 7% versus 93. So she indicated they are looking at that at some point in the future being undefined. Maybe something coming down in that area, but at least for next year, I mean, we've all seen what happens out here. At times, we have 8 lanes wide, and we had a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. Nobody's ever been killed. I think there've been a few people clipped, but nobody's had any serious injuries or anything like that. It's just maddening sometimes to be stuck in a line when there's no need for it, because people will follow some simple rudimentary rules. But one of the things we talked about at the planning public works meeting was perhaps expanding the hours of operation of our facility. And if we expand the hours, we probably also have to expand the number of personnel that are working at that point. We're asking that as the budget is being prepared for next year, that we consider perhaps a placeholder for another full-time person in the budget for next year. As far as the hours go, that's still talking about that. There is a need for a physical change out there also. Jim has indicated that as the amount of recyclable materials has grown over the years, the compactor that we use for that is the smallest of the 3 that we have out there. So there probably is a need to expand that. You know, I've seen many times that people bring in cardboard boxes and they don't collapse them down. I'll admit that sometimes I don't, but I try. But people will throw big boxes in there and all of a sudden the thing jams up. The guys are poking them with 2x4s trying to mash everything down. They're somewhat afraid to jump up and down that in order to get it down, but it can be a problem. And something with a bigger mouth on it with a little bit more capacity is something we probably want to use. So that's something that we should consider for next year on the capital side of our budget. So we have been discussing for some time. It's almost like some of the other ordinances that we consider, they take a long time to come to a conclusion is how to really identify residents of the town using the facility out here. Because we've gone to this hanging tag, the orange tag, and Pat told me that one of the things he's noticed, and he's had to shag a few people out of here, that people will loan those tags out to people that don't live in the town. They just turn them around so you can't see the license plate number. And whenever he sees one of those and he has the time to stop them, he said, just about every time he's had to send them away. So we're talking about RFID chip maybe with some kind of reader, you know, something like not exactly like what you find at a car wash where you have a gate because you wind up into the city. You did that. You have to have some real-time mechanism to identify who's who, you know, an arrow that says this guy isn't, you know, get him out of here. So that's still being discussed, but a larger capacity recycling compactor and the placeholder for another full-time person is the recommendation of our committee for next year. That's it.
Thank you. Jared, environmental.
I'll come back for the ECB. So nothing for the environmental.
Okay, Councilman Davis for ordinance.
No, nothing like that.
Okay. Planning. Yes, Chuck here. Zoning board of appeals. ECB. Back to you, Jim.
I just want to say at the last ECB meeting, we did discuss, assuming that we can have Halloween at Ononda this year, hoping that we can have it. We do have a display for rain collection barrels for people to come in and pick one up, and we're some in kits and things to work on those. Is one of our plans. So they come in, they can get a slip, and they can come in and redeem that for a barrel. And we're also looking to start a program of tree planting in the various town parks. So as time goes on, you know, if we can get 2 decent sized trees a year as part of our process, kind of repopulate the parks and keep them going with model trees that other people might want to plant in the surrounding area. And that's it.
Citizens Implementation Committee. Parks and Rec Committee, and then we have somebody who can Parks and Rec. The request perhaps for you and the chairman, I was able to come to the last Parks and Rec Committee meeting. And I thought a lot of good information came up. I went to some times. I would love to see that information given in whatever form possible, because I can't always make it to that meeting. I think you guys are doing a lot of great stuff that we don't know about. And I know that Mark can't always come to the meeting. I think sometimes maybe we think we get this information. This goes for all of us. I know I can be very objective. So if there's some way that we could kind of get that information.
And I'll speak to special events.
All right.
So the Halloween Ever Remember, we held a meeting and we are going to be making a decision by the end of the month relative to whether or not to have it. I will say that one of our committee members went out to a few of the groups that are participating in that Halloween Ever, and we got a resounding no from the fire department that they feel it would be very unsafe. And so if we get too many of those, obviously the event would be hard to have because it relies on the cooperation of a lot of different community groups. So we're kind of doing the scouring the groups at the moment to see what the feeling is. And
I think that can change, as I said, it's going to change so quickly for the next couple of weeks, so that's hard
to predict where we'll be.
Unfortunately, yes. All right, thank you. Agriculture Committee. Drainage Committee. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Next, we have our next bill to the floor. If anyone would like to be heard.
That is a comment through chat, if I could just share with the board here.
Okay.
And, Rod, I don't know if you want to speak or not, but hello, Rod. 18 degrees here, and I'm going to read this. And we live at 5785 Farmington Town Line Road, and we'd like to say the road is looking good. We'd like to know when it will be done. We also know this is not the place or time, but we talked to the Farmington Town Board and would like to get an update on when town sewer is coming, where it's being looked at ASAP. We also be talking to Farmington Town Board on the 24th for an update on town sewer.
And I will pop in here for a second, sort of for myself. Something that John Casey brought up and has been a frustration of mine, and maybe when I leave or before then, we can firm up our procedures as far as privilege of floor and answering questions. It's been a frustration of mine that I haven't been able to answer questions. And from time to time I do, but I think perhaps we might want to do something like the county does. If someone wants to speak, they let us know ahead of time. And perhaps if the questions were submitted that way, as they are with the county, we could be prepared to answer questions. Because sometimes I'm prepared for the agenda, but I might not be prepared to answer that question. And these are my thoughts for the future. That's not to preclude others from coming up and speaking, but if a question is going to be asked, perhaps we can do it through that procedure for the future. I do think some of the procedures need to be fixed so that we can do that, because there's been plenty of times I've wanted to answer the question, but then it becomes much more unruly, it becomes its own meeting. So with that said, anyone else want to be heard? Right, resolutions and motions. Jared, we'll leave this one to you.
Right, resolution 2021-172, adoption of the Arizona Canada form-based code and seeker determination of non-significance.
Wait, right. I thought we were going to continue that to the next one. September 20th.
So your motion was to continue.
So we're continuing it.
Attorney moved to table until September.
Definitely.
You're seconding it?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Any opposed?
I'm abstaining.
All right,
I'm totally not necessarily establishing.
So I have no question, no. Just,
okay, so this one's back to you, Kathy.
resolution number 2021-175, secret determination of non-significance. Adoption of text amendment pertaining to zoning in order to allow for the replacement of certain pre-existing signs with digital signs.
Yeah, I would suggest that we hold this for the end of the meeting so that you can go into executive session to discuss potential litigation, and then you may wish to take action on this after that executive session.
I'm gonna do that, and I don't know right now whether we may take action or not, but we might, so for those at the end of the meeting who wish to stick around. Normally we'll say whether it's a immediate action, so I don't know. Resolution number 2021-179, adoption of the town of Canandaigua comprehensive plan update 2021 and secret determination of non-significance.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Congratulations. to everyone. All right, resolution. No, put it on. 175. Year 22. Number 2021-182, acceptance of monthly financial reports.
So,
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-183, acknowledgement and authorization of budget transfers by town manager.
so moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-184, authorization for town manager to make 2021 budget adjustment. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-185, authorizing town manager to execute agreement with Lang audio visual systems for technology upgrades in the Honolulu building at Town Hall.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-186, authorizing the town manager to execute service contract for installation of network cables in Town Hall.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution number 2021-187, authorizing town manager to execute agreement for Wi-Fi upgrades in Town Hall.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I can just say it's sorely needed.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-181, authorizing town manager.
188.
What did I say?
181.
2021-188, authorizing town manager to create a part-time position for an information technology support technician two. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-189, approving purchase of short-term rental software and authorizing town manager to execute.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution number 2021-190, appointing a temporary part-time real property owner.
So moved. Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-191, acknowledgement of ARPA funds for the town of Canandaigua and authorization to create capital project fund to track expenditure. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Resolution number 2021-192, authorizing town manager to execute memorandum of understanding with the city of Canandaigua pertaining to Canandaigua Local Development Corporation. Second, any discussion?
I've got a couple questions on this one. After thinking of the presentation that we had the other day and looking at some of the financials from the LDC, I'm trying to look and still wrap my head around all the benefits that are coming back to the town, a lot of focus is on the city. And things that were being done there. And I look at, it seems like the biggest expense is, in the consulting for MRV, over $50,000 a year for that for 2020 and 2021. And I look at that and I'm thinking, are we getting back what we're putting in? I know it takes 3 years. I know it's been up for 3 years. And it takes time for these things to develop, but I just wonder if it's doing what we're, putting this money into, if we're getting back what we're putting into it. It's one of the concerns that I have with it. I'm wondering, I'd be more comfortable support it for a year, see what happens, or put that 25,000 in reserve, because they've got a $200,000 balance in the account. And then if something is needed down the road, then we can make a resolution for that funding. But as of right now, I don't know how I feel about supporting it with a 25,000.
So as the town's representative, I have been represented for the past year and a half, give or take. The first year, which was basically, right, COVID. So I share your concerns, quite honestly. I know that recently the board, the LDC voted to change the bylaws. The town has to agree to those changes before they're implemented. I actually was not there when that vote took place. I don't know that I was in favor of adding that many more people or potentially more people. I have concerns. I think that a joint economic development committee is probably what this entity should or could be. I think that a lot of what they're doing is very important work, but I don't see it as an LDC or just the way it's working. I think that there's some good work being done in terms of getting grants. A lot of us have been involved in a lot of good work, but again, that's the work of an economic development committee, not necessarily an LDC. So I think that I am also of the mind of putting it in reserve. I don't know who will take my place when I am gone. I don't know how other members of this board feel. If there's someone who will, we have a lot of members up for re-election, so who will be here. I imagine Jared, with your schedule as it is, even if elected, that's not something that you could step up to the plate. Not that that should make a decision here, but so that's my thoughts on it. I have been agonizing over it for quite some time. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts.
Is the local development corp taking the place of our economic development committee? Because we used to have economic development before LDC, and then we merged them in kind of together.
I don't see it taking the place. I just think that as a result of COVID and things, it kind of just took a back seat. I think the joint committee, the problem is with just an economic development committee, there are the same issues with funding. Right? You can't just give money to some company to say.
The committee is still the municipality, still the town of Canandaigua. If you have a committee, it still is the town of Canandaigua.
And I don't know that we have it at
No, we don't. I think, honestly, and truly, I hear what you're saying about the volunteer committees, but for instance, I'll tell you, like, I get the notifications from GRE, they give you 24 hours to respond. That's not something a volunteer group is ever gonna be able to do. And there's any number of economic initiatives that the LDC has been working on. And for instance, a business in the town of Canandaigua that is looking to relocate. And I'll tell you, Z-Bar is looking to relocate. The LDC, Matt Horn, hired by the LDC, went and met with Z-Bar and then helped them with the location to the new property that they're looking to purchase. The project that we talked about tonight, the LDC has already had meetings with that to help fill those spots. The recent sale and acquisition of the driving range by another person on State Route 332, the LDC on that has already met with the landowner talking about development. So there were 6 initiatives that the community identified specifically for the LDC to work on as, and that was a survey of the entire community, city and town. And 3 of those initiatives were definitely primarily focused on the city. 3 of them were geared a little bit more towards the town, agriculture, preservation, and they really haven't worked on that yet because as everybody knows, they've really been working on, they got a grant for this connection of the downtown to the lakefront. But I would also tell you that recently, I think it was at the last LDC meeting, the LDC voted without any additional requests from the town to 100% fund the wayfinding signage issue uptown, downtown, and the lakefront, so that there's uniform signage as you come into the Canandaigua community, including all 3. The LDC is also, I know that there's a meeting later this week. I'll just tell you one of the things that we're talking about is a grant application specifically for uptown. The resolution that's on your agenda reduces the town's contribution from 50,000 to 25,000, and it's already been approved by the city council. And basically giving 3 years, giving 3 years to say, okay, you know, can you move this forward? Are there going to be some big projects to come out of that? We also have the Central on Main, which includes some town restaurants. That's the area next to the Chamber of Commerce that was funded by the LDC without any contributions from the town or the city. That is 100% to the LDC in the bid. So I hear what you're saying, and I don't think you're wrong in any stretch. And we've been saying it's time for the LDC to advance. It currently took them longer than we would have liked for them to get going, especially with COVID. That didn't help anything. But they are serving as a central point for contact when businesses are interested in the town of Canandaigua. And those conversations are happening.
But wouldn't that, I mean, the Z-Bar, could that have happened with our development office?
That's not realistic.
So they came in and they were looking for a spot, the driving range. I mean, this is development within the town, so I think that's something that
The development
our
office
development
does.
office can do.
No, the development office does planning, zoning, application review. They don't do economic development. The development office doesn't have an economic developer on staff. to go out and do
Well, when you meet with developers who are interested in the town, that's something that can be done, right? So if a Z-Bar were to come in and say, we're interested in the town, that's somebody that you would meet with.
Perhaps, possibly. I mean, but there's so many other things that I do in the course of a day. I mean, right now it's budget.
I mean, I'm not saying every day somebody's gonna come in, but
But you have to have somebody who's out there helping to drive economic development.
And I agree with that. I just don't know. And I think they're doing a great job with it. I just don't see that as a procedure. And I agree with you saying about volunteer committees, and I think that those of us who are on this are dedicated to it and want and see the good of it. My concern is that as an LDC, and my concern is seeing it grow and having more members who are not part of the structure that we've already set up. On a consulting basis, perhaps.
That was changed. That was reduced versus the original proposal. That hasn't even come forward, yet,
No, okay. All I heard was that it was voted on. I had number I lost.
but it was reduced.
Okay, so we need to talk about that some more.
Can I make a recommendation? Why don't you ask Matt Horn to tell them what he's been doing for the town? Ken?
He was
Well,
just-
yes,
I know, but if you're,
I mean,
his
we
report
even
was
brought it
brought
up last week, but he presented to us.
I can
I
tell
mean,
you.
know your audience. I mean, sorry to be rude, but, you know, and I think of the discussion we had about the affordable housing, in my mind, that would have been something that they could have stepped in on and crickets. So that's where I'm coming from, and also the fact that, you know, everything back when it was in its infancy, all the concerns, you know, there's very little, you know, about everything that I've in research and things that I had read are warning signs of, as they grow and become too unruly, you need to be careful. Everything from the comptroller came out like that. So that's, you know, that's another concern that's different than the funding, but it affects the decision on the funding.
So I can say,
But
I do see the benefit personally of the things that are being done for the city that have benefits to the town. So as I've said all along, and way back when, as I've told you many times, I was one of those people that answered that survey that came out of the joint economic entity. And I think the health of the city really affects the health of the town. I just don't know if LEC is the right entity for them, and I'm not criticizing it. I think it's been developing over time. I don't know. I'm not saying we should throw it out. I just want everyone to know my thoughts on it, even as being involved in it. I think MRB is doing what they're doing. They're doing a great job. They're knowledgeable. I've been involved in the study for the downtown area in terms of connectivity between the lake and uptown. I think so there's some great ideas out there, and most of the LDC attends those meetings. And I would, regardless of what happens here today, I would invite you all to come to one of those meetings to see what is happening. My concern goes again in terms of providing an LDC. Part of what they do is they provide funding. Right now we're all running on, and we've had this discussion many times in the LDC, how to get this money that supposedly will fund these projects that is not just coming from the town. What we've been doing so far is, it's not a volunteer committee, but we've been doing economic development, which is important. So I don't know if we have to reimagine it. I'm not saying again that I'm against it, but I don't see it operating at this point. So that's all. So where's that leave us?
How hard will it be if we amend it to just 1 year? To see how effective we're going to be.
They would have to go back to the city council. I can't answer that. I don't know. City council has approved the agreement, the 3-year intermunicipal agreement. Again, trying to give LDC, you know, hey, here's a time period, 3 years. It's not just, you know, 1 year. You know, realistically, even this grant that they're talking about for Uptown, they won't know that till probably early in next year, late this year, early next year at the absolute earliest. So, you know, if you're talking about 2022, I mean, that's a pretty short window for economic development purposes. Economic development takes a while. You have to cultivate that.
But if we see growth, it could come back and we could revamp that and we could add the year. I'm more comfortable with a 1-year commitment. And then let's see what happens. If it's good things are happening, then yeah, I mean, we could say, let's re-up for, you know, let's keep it going. But if we're not seeing the returns.
Well, are we not seeing the returns though? Because I feel like Doug mentioned a bunch of things that maybe we weren't aware of. Because when Matt came in, he used a presentation that was more global in scale. Instead of saying, hey, town of Canandaigua, this is what I'm doing for you. He gave us like, hey, this is what the LDC does. Are we really feeling like they're not, that things aren't happening? Because it sounds like there are some things happening. And yes, maybe we can hire some staff at the town, or we can make another volunteer committee and try to squeeze a few more people into attending a few more meetings. And reinvigorate the economic development committee, because I think that committee died when Greg Westbrook.
No,
Oh, it's so long ago?
No, this story was an offshoot of that story. It was so
I
much-
kind of still cherish that, but the committee hasn't met. And really, you know, that group was focused on Uptown, the Uptown focus study. And that's what that group has worked on to this point.
And I don't see that economic committee that close when I started as a substitute for this. I think it's much more than that volunteer committee, which had the best of intentions and was pivotal in setting up the LDC.
Yeah, I feel like that was how it came about, is that we recognized we couldn't do what we wanted to do, and we thought we needed to formalize it and work together with the city. And so,
Is it something where we need at some point our own developer? Or is that more money? I'm just putting it out there that is this taking that place, and if so, not really an LDC again, but is there some other entity? So I'm inclined to, I don't know, for 3 years, it's 25,000, which is half of what it was. I'm voting for it.
Is there an escape clause in this thing?
I guess we.
No, I mean, it is a partnership with members. I know, right over there. eh?
Yeah.
Oh, there's
Jared, come back.
isn't there a,
There is actually in the bylaws of the LDC, if any one of the three members basically wants to dissolve the corporation, there's a process that's laid out in dissolution, and then whatever assets are left of the entity, if this is a corporation, would be, in this case, it would go back to the city and town, would be split, because that's where the money has come from. But I also tell you that there's expenses coming up, like this grant application that I'm talking about is $15,000. That would, go a long way for Uptown if that gets funded, and we're talking to experts in the field that know what they're doing relative to these. It's a state huge shot in the arm if we're very successful in getting that. And so it's not like the money's just sitting there doing nothing. There's a whole series of things. The last meeting, I want to say it was, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I just wasn't prepared to be able to answer these questions this evening. I want to say it was either $15,000. No, actually, I think it was $35,000 that the LDC authorized for the whole wayfinding signage piece for uptown, downtown, and the lakefront. It was a pretty substantial amount of money. So there are expenses that are happening.
so there's a way to get out of this from Chilton down the road.
Yes.
And there are some legitimate things coming along that, I'm inclined to support it, so.
I would just ask if you would consider even attending virtually Thursdays. And whenever you can, that way you can see for yourself. If possible, I don't suppose. Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Right.
Did you have a motion?
Said it no, or said it or nay?
No.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Would you like to say nay or no?
Since you asked me, I'll say next.
Four in favor. Motion, resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-193, authorizing the town manager to execute grant award contract with New York State Archives State Education Department for local government records management improvement funds, grants, and project budget creation. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution. Resolution number 2021-194, authorizing town manager to execute contract with Darrow Architecture as part of the town's awarded preserve New York grant and project budget creation. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes. Resolution number 2021-195, adoption of policy relating to COVID-19 vaccination for employees of the town of Canandaigua. So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you. I'm going to ask you to continue this. A number of reasons, including, it's my understanding that the state policy that this is based on is only in effect if the FDA has approved the vaccine, which they have not yet done.
Right.
And then I've also had some conversations with the union. I can tell you that generally they're not opposed to this, but they just ask for a little bit more time. There's still some moving parts going on with this, so we just have to continue it at least until next month.
Thank you. Whether we're just gonna continue that, we don't even come to it.
Motion to continue.
Motion
Motion to
to
continue.
to adjourn. To adjourn, yeah, I think you can adjourn. I have
Table.
it out, so,
So are we putting it to a certain time frame, or are we, I just adjourning indefinitely, or
you
we're
can adjourn to next month. you know? When a question is under debate, no motion may be received except a motion to amend the question, to put the question, to postpone it indefinitely, to adjourn it to a specific day. To lay it on the table, to commit to a committee, no motion to adjourn.
okay, yeah, no, I just wanted to know what's going to.
No, I just want to let you know, we can adjourn it for a particular.
We need to set a certain time until. Let's say, or until state makes up their mind.
You want to take it, table it indefinitely, you could come back on that day.
do the same thing.
Discuss it next month.
All right, we'll
Because
put
we
it on
should.
September 20th. I will make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second your motion.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to adjourn is next one. If you never do the right terminology, so
So you make sure, I thought you were adjourning the meeting.
I sound like an idiot, so I made sure. I got it. All right, resolution number 2021-196, accepting proposal from Superior Exteriors of the Finger Lakes to replace two roofs at Armanda Park and authorizing the town manager to execute that one.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution, any opposed? I'm sorry. Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-197. So we don't need to. Setting a public hearing on a local law to rezone certain parcels to the form-based code zoning district and superintendent of the agency. Can we take them here this way?
No, we didn't set the
So
public.
this would be the next.
This is the next.
And this is just setting a public
So,
hearing.
setting the hearing for next month.
Okay, why don't you take the
So can I get a motion to, so set the public hearing for next month?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm listening.
This one, next one also, resolution 2021-198, setting a public hearing on a local law to incorporate the adopted form-based code into town code and seeker intends to declare the agency.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Same ones.
All right, thanks.
All right,
For that.
all right.
I did not, no. Thank you.
You ready?
Yes, thank you.
Resolution number 2021-199, adoption of a local law to amend conservation subdivision regulations. Speaking and seeking determination of non-significance. So,
Second.
any discussion?
Yeah, and then page 24, the third, be it further resolved. So the adoption of the Uptown County form-based code instead of conservation.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Well, second, please.
Place Uptown Canandaigua form-based with conservation subdivision. Is that your motion to make that amendment?
Yes.
I'll second that. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Motion to amend paragraph carries. Any further discussion on this resolution as amended? Thank you for catching that. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution number 2021-200, dissolving the drainage committee and combining it with the town board planning public works. Any discussion?
Just interesting, dissolving the drainage.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution carries. Resolution number 2021-201, Town Board authorization for expenditures related to the affordable housing project.
Second.
Any discussion?
When it says on-demand advisory services for 10,000, who approves it? What's the policy? With that, for that $10,000.
So I did look that up because I had that very same question. It looks like Doug. It says ordinance designate, so that was my concern. I assume that.
It says when called upon by town leadership, that would include the town manager, the town board.
That's for on-demand advisory services.
It's under the strategic support, I'm assuming that.
It's a section there. That is my concern as well. And I just, so we just, we don't want to, they'll just run up as people are asking MRB questions that might be able to be answered by someone else. Our planner has a lot of knowledge in the area of affordable housing. I think that would be fair to say. She's very knowledgeable in this area, so. I don't want, that's my concern. I think it's a great idea, I just think perhaps we need to tweak that.
I mean, it says town leadership. I mean, that would include if Shawna contacted them, I guess if anybody contacted them. That's really no different than what happens now. But that might be, if anyone, you contact them or I contact them, we get billed for it. So.
What about our committee, though, if they have a question, who approves? You would.
Well, the committee, I don't know, it's not, it says, when called upon by town leadership, I'm just reading that myself, right? Human resources committee development experts will provide insight to council as relates to the following.
I think there's a section that's more specific that kind of goes through, which I think it in their proposal, it says.
Called upon by the town manager or is the.
Well, that's the project statement.
So here's why it's not that big of a problem. Because,
You're not going.
well, I'm in charge of enforcing your contracts. And this is a $10,000 contract. If MRB runs it up tomorrow morning, because Karen keeps calling Lance, they're probably not gonna get other contracts in the town, which are worth a lot more than $10,000. So I think it's not an issue, and you relied on MRB's good judgment in billing for decades now. And they have who it says to, the town leadership. I don't think that does include the committee members, I think that includes town leadership. If they're gonna run you up the bill, they're gonna have more problems than the town will with the $10,000 invoice. That was a threat, anybody out in MRB watching.
I guess my other question was,
Appreciate it.
are there, why Shawna would be doing most of this? And I assume that she has that. Is that been discussed? Is that been a problem? What area of expertise that we would expect out of our planners? Well, I think it says in the job description, that she works with that.
I don't think that affordable housing is spelled out specifically in terms of the civil service position for town planner, is what I'm saying. While she may have knowledge, I don't believe that is specifically spelled out in civil service. So, and it's not that they would be this amount up to $10,000. So obviously, we would use as much as possible relative to anything for that matter. And we do that for all of our projects. And every single MLB or even Chris Nadler invoice that comes in, he knows, I look at it. And that's the normal process that we go through. We don't just pay these bills and people would just able to, run charges up against the town of Winnebago. So I don't see it any different for that. I guess I'm not sure.
I don't like to just create these sort of advisory committees paying money when we can't already have that capability. This is I think if it is akin to someone hiring me as their attorney, criminal attorney, then they think someone has to give them criminal advice. Am I wrong? Let me know that, but it seems to me that in the description that I've seen of the planner's job, that would be something that our committee. We were criticized for not funding this position, right? We created it. My envision was for the committee to work on it and use the resources that we already have. If that's not available, then that's fine, but my understanding of what we have available is very capable people who can answer those questions. If I'm wrong, let me know. I don't see that everyone has this great knowledge that would already be accessible to others. Maybe I'm wrong. I see it in what you're saying in terms of providing, they said statistics and other examples, but I think maybe you said for other projects. It's a good one, I don't know, but I just seems like a frustration on the committee's part of not having that information that we might already have.
Like I said, with the the LDC, I prefer to keep as much in-house as we can. But, use the people and the resources that we have, but I also look at the presentation that we had tonight. Here we had a builder come in and without any extra cost or expense on our end, they came in and they made a presentation that meets these goals, because obviously they're aware of the things that we're looking at, to have that housing in that certain price point and price range.
I don't think we have the expertise in house to do this. That's why you need to go outside and find professionals to help. As far as accounting for the individual questions that are asked, I mean, perhaps it's possible to get an estimate of time ahead of time and say, okay, we already got 20 hours, that's $150 an hour. There's $3,000 for this element.
So as far
Needs to be supported.
So as far as expertise of identifying what affordable housing is,
No, the whole thing. I mean, you read through the whole thing here, that's just that.
so support future residential growth. That makes Canada livable for all ages, abilities, and income levels, which is in the comprehensive plan. So I would assume that, I would think along the lines of Kathy, that we have people that would have the knowledge and wherewithal to provide that.
Who is it? Who is that?
Well, we have a development office, we have a manager who used to be a planner.
I don't think that has to be say. I think frequently we have to lead others through the woods. I've said this before, doing that in the area of fire protection for the city and the town. The city would not move ahead at all if it weren't for us pushing them as a result of that fire study, to make additions to the staff and professional firefighters. I think that we have to sometimes lead the way, and if spending $10,000 can lead the way and perhaps get others like the LDC interested, the city of Canandaigua or some other agency, then it's money well spent.
My problem is just with the word of it, to answer our questions. We all educate ourselves every day on everything, right? If we had paid $10,000 to get information on everything we do, because we don't have that information, that's a problem. Perhaps we send our plan for training on this. This is some information that we should have. In the training that I've done since I've been here myself, educating myself. We're just hiring someone to answer somebody's questions is my problem. We need that information. And I'm not saying I'm not gonna vote for it this time, but I will look closely at it because maybe we send someone for that, for training on that. That information is out there. People that work in our town should have this information.
And we have access to people that have that knowledge.
Why don't we
They
have
work
that
at it
knowledge?
for free.
We should have that knowledge.
What would it cost us to have somebody on our staff to do that?
I don't
$50,
know.
$80, $100,000 a year?
To train someone in that?
Huh?
To train someone in affordable
No, to have
housing?
somebody on their staff permanently to do that.
I don't know. but maybe we should look into it. That's, it's,
Fine.
if you're.
Vote
if someone's-
whichever way you want.
I will, I'm just bringing up my concerns, am I not allowed to do that? You vote every
But-
whichever way you want.
I will.
And I will as well.
But I
okay?
think it's valid to say that, I mean, we have a highly qualified staff who we pay a lot of money to. And I don't think it's going above and beyond to say, hey, it'd be nice if we had this in-house to be able to ask these questions. And then if it's above and beyond their knowledge and they can't find it or figure it out, then we can tap into the other resources that we have. But we're going this way, instead of going through what we have and the knowledge that we have, we're making an end run to the experts that come in and say that they're experts in the field. So we're making an end run around the knowledge that we have.
I think it supplements the knowledge that we have there. I don't necessarily think that we have that knowledge, not slighting anybody here. Just saying I don't want to have that on the staff.
Well, I think
If
maybe
we did, I think that Karen would be making use of that right now instead of saying, hey, let's do that.
If we don't have it, I'm not saying I'm not gonna vote for it, we should have it. This is information that every town should have.
and so I think the committee is
That's funny.
asking.
No, you're
for-
about to get it, right? You're about to get it from MRB Group.
That's on
For
demand. If
$10,000.
someone has a question now, we can let it go.
It'd be
I
just
share my
like,
position on it. I will keep an eye on this is all I'm saying. Okay, I think the wording of an on-demand advisory service to answer questions is a temporary solution to a long-term problem.
fine, maybe we should hire somebody that has that expertise, but right now, I don't think it's the answer your question, we need more guidance.
That's what it says. I mean, what it says.
I'm just saying, that's my impression of it. And that's my understanding of what that committee is asking for. Maybe we should change the word question to guidance.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Resolution number 2021-202, soil erosion and sediment control. Sure, it's a block. I will do that a block.
There's a problem.
Everybody's a little testy
What do you
today.
have?
4487 through, I'm sorry,
Kathy?
2021-202 through
There's
2021.
problem in the first one.
Yeah.
So for 4487 middle Cheshire, but in the text it says 4459.
So we have to change the map.
I read these agendas.
Terry, you are like the eagle eye tonight. You didn't get the special award.
4487 Middle Cheshire Road.
4487.
And I think that's a clerical. Unless you disagree with me.
There's nothing we need to amend.
Okay, so, if there are no objections, we'll consider 2021-202 through 2021-205 as a block. As a motion to consider these as a block,
Whoa.
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? Those resolutions 2021, 202 through 2021-205 are carried. All right, then we will motion to go in, approval of the town board meeting minutes from July 19th, 2021.
So moved.
Any corrections, deletions, substitutions? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion to approve town board meeting carries. Payment of the bills, Jean.
Utility abstract dated July 30th, 2021, totaling $11,015.72. The general fund of $2,362.22. Highway fund $164.88. Capital projects of $1,528.89. Water districts of $1,456.63. Custodial funds of $5,501.60. Town board abstract dated August 16th, 2021, totaling $403,666.66. General fund of $144,811.89. Highway fund of $124,639.30. Capital projects of $90,296.51. Lighting districts of $1,101.18. Water districts of $42,817.18.
Thank you. Have a motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, there was a question in one of the bills, Finger Lakes tourism. We should pay that and not doing that.
Yes, thanks for bringing that up, Terry. So there is a $395 invoice in the stack of bills that is included in that $403,666.06. That $395 in Finger Lakes tourism line, which is based out of Penn, I believe was it's been paid for the last 4 years, you know, to the best of my knowledge. It's my understanding the original intent for that service, and that would be for the 2022 membership. It's my understanding the intent of that was for advertisement of our parks and our cabin rentals. I think, you know, and again, I wanted to put a note in there to bring this to your attention for you all to get some direction whether or not you want to continue to do that. That is a non-budgeted expense. That's what flagged it for me. That has never been put in the budget, yet it's something that has been paid annually. Additionally, what I would say is our new software system, which links all of our cabins and everything with like Airbnb and VVRO, we probably, I'm gonna, this is an opinion on my part, but I think we get a bigger bang for our buck doing that than advertising $395 a year for Finger Lakes Tourism Alliance. But I at least wanted to bring it to your attention so you all give some direction.
Can I possibly speak?
I don't know, I know it's out of turn.
This is the first.
I didn't
one.
update it.
It's the first video, so like, I just happened to see it when I was going through the bill. So
What exactly do they do?
Finger Lakes Tourism Alliance is the Finger Lakes regional entity that promotes tourism of the Finger Lakes. In addition to that, we also have the Ontario County, which, as you know, Valerie now Black. And so that's funded through the county through our tax dollars. But this is in addition.
So we're funding Val. and we're-
That's Ontario, that's separate.
Okay, but we're doing this, I think. If we're getting a good return on our Airbnb, VRBO, since that's what everybody's going to anyway.
Yeah, certainly the occupancy rates with the data in their back, you know, roughly 90% or something.
We're full. We're full. So
I don't know that we gain anything.
Yeah.
Is it town businesses game?
I mean, the biggest thing that why it jumped out to me and I flagged it is because it has never been put in the budget as a budget request. And here it was an invoice that was coming. So it should have properly gone through the budget process for you to approve an invoice coming.
So if we disapprove it now, it could become from the budget.
You could, sure, anybody could, you know, request and we could put it back into the
But
budget
if we've got
process.
90% so far through the software, why would we spend extra?
I don't know, just some, this is the first one here.
Yeah, no,
If
that's
someone,
my question.
if someone was to come forward and say, hey. this is the company, I don't know. I'm losing the big deal, I just want to. You know, we don't know how much we do.
it's hard to track, isn't it?
And how much is it?
$395 annually. So this is for the 2022. So the other thing I would suggest if you, and again, this just came up as I was going through the bills. Maybe we could amend this now. We could look into this a little bit more if it's worthwhile. We can bring it back through the proper budget process. Because this is for the 2022 agreement. It says it's spelled out.
So it's already paid 2021, so it's not,
Right.
we're not paying it, we're not.
I'd like to see what they put out for us, you know, the past years.
You're on their website right now.
Where
You can't click the here to check availability and make a reservation.
you cannot.
You cannot. In this picture, in the description.
Because I'm saying no to all this other money, I mean, I'm okay if we just let us. You can let us slide out, I'm being consistent.
So I guess my recommendation, I guess, if you're looking for, is let's amend this abstract, take this out. And then we can look at this more and put it through the proper budget process, which is what it should have done, especially since this is for 2022 expenditures. So then your amended abstract total would be for the general fund, $144,416.89, with your total abstract of $403,271.06.
Sounds good.
Okay. As amended. Is that a motion to? Would you need to? You have to vote.
Not as amended.
That is amended.
So moved.
So moved. And second, Carrie seconded it.
Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to approve payment of bills carries. Okay, privilege of the floor. Anyone else want to know?
May I react to the Finger Lakes tourism?
Yes.
That's
Sure,
part
you
of
have
the
to come stand up here now.
You have to say who you are.
Please state your name for the record for people who might not know.
You're strangers.
Dennis Brewer. You know, when I was here, we always budgeted to be part of the Finger Lakes tourism, 20 plus years. We always found it beneficial. If you can get a copy of the literature and stuff, I know they have a program where they used to have it up here in the literature rack. We always had a literature rack down on the park. Probably we gave out at least 1,000 copies of the booklet that they have. They had a large book which covered the whole area. They also had a smaller guide which was a little bit easier to hand out. In that guide, it always mentioned places people could participate in parks. And it also had cabin rentals and things, and Oneida was always listed. So at that time, we found it was beneficial, but Doug also made a good point that today, you know, we have other sources. So, you know, I'm not here to ask you to be part of that. I just wanted to give you some background. But if you can get some copies of their literature, it really is top quality literature. And they always have a brochure exchange at the Waterloo Outlet Mall. And there are, I don't know, 150 organizations that were there. So when I was here, we always did budget it. And I know I gave the information to Sam, and I have no idea, you know, the last couple of years what happened.
You state your name.
Hi, I'm Adeline Rudolph. I can't speak for, again, the Finger Lakes Tourism Alliance, but I have worked with them a lot on their executive board over the years of my day job. I would highly recommend that you invite Cindy Kimball from the Finger Lakes Tourism Alliance to come here at some point and present to this town. One of the things that was brought up when I told them I was from the town of Canandaigua is that they represent an 11 county region. Most of the towns in their region, and I can't speak to the exact amounts, support them with a very significant amount of funding, just as a general tourism marketing agency. And it was notable to them, me being from the town of Canandaigua, that we did not do that because it sort of stuck out like a sore thumb to them. So it might be something you want to talk to them about. I know from the time I've spent with them that they have done television marketing campaigns. They had a 100th anniversary. They're the oldest tourism organization in New York State. They had 2 years ago. They also they did a program on WXXI, which featured Canandaigua and the Finger Lakes recently. That was through the Finger Lakes Tourism Alliance. And they do national and international marketing that includes Canandaigua, of course, in that as well. So I think it would make sense to invite Cindy Kimball, who's their director, to come here and talk to you about it and see what they could be doing for us and what they are and are not doing for us right now. So
thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Okay. Hands, we have any business. Last provision 4. We need a motion to go into executive session. Discussion. And it's for the proposed pending or current litigation, including the town manager and town attorney. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And you may have.
Correct, so we may have action after this. If anyone else wants to stay, so I don't know for sure if we will take them. But we just keep you up. Oh,
Right.
we're already in progress.
We exit executive session at 8:55 and a half.
Resolution number 2021-175. Determination of non-significance and adoption of a text for amendment pertaining to zoning in order to allow for the replacement of certain pre-existing signs with digital signs. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn this to next month, September 20th.
Because the agreement isn't finalized.
That is correct. Correct. A second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to adjourn carries.
Joe, we can talk tomorrow morning. I think it'll be quick fixes, but
All right.
we need to have all our eyes dotted and T's crossed.
Yeah, happy to.
Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Should be able to get there, I
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
See you all next month.